Hello and welcome to WightWanderer. You join me today on a very wet September afternoon on a bench under a chronically undersized umbrella. Today though, we are not on the hunt for an old abandoned railway line. We are in fact on the hunt for an old memory. But before this turns into an episode of This Is Your Life, it is relevant to the channel because this memory is in fact railway related. Let me explain. See, back in 2001, when I was about 11 years old, my mum was looking to buy a new property. She picked me up from school and we went to a viewing at a house in Brading. Obviously I was quite young, but I do remember that we walked through the front of this building, which seemed to be an old shop. The floorboards were very rickety, but as we got up to the third floor of the extension out the back, there was in fact an old railway carriage body built into the building. Now this memory actually came back to me quite recently. I'd completely forgotten about it until about a month ago when I was over at my mother's reminiscing about old times, as you do. And I thought what I'd do is do a little bit of research and make a video about it, see if I can find this old abandoned railway carriage that is somewhere in a building in Brading.
Brading is a distinctive ancient town located on the east side of the island, just south of Ryde. It is possibly best known for being the location of the former Waxworks Museum, which closed in 2010. But its history is rather more broad and diverse. That subject though will have to wait for another video because today I'm here on the hunt for a piece of railway history.
Now before we start, we need to find the building in question, and seeing as I remember walking through the front of a shop, the obvious choice would be the fish and chip shop at the top of Brading High Street. My mother, on the other hand though, seems to remember it being a little further down the road. In fact, the building, which is now painted yellow and has a tea room sign out the front. And this would make sense because if we go into the car park around the back, you can actually see the extension on top of the building and the variation in the brickwork. Another thing my mother does remember, which I don't, is that there wasn't just one carriage body in the building, there were in fact two.
This of course is not a certainty. The carriage could well indeed have been cut in half and placed at opposite ends of the room. But looking at the extension itself, it does seem to be large enough to accommodate two old coach bodies. Plus, I'm not one to argue with my mother. So let's assume for now, there's two. I am a little reluctant though to go barging in uninvited and with just a vague memory at hand. So instead, I thought I'd do a little bit of investigating.
What I thought I'd do first then is check UK PRSL, which is the UK Preserved Rolling Stock list. Now this lists all the rolling stock currently in Great Britain, but the cool thing about it is it also lists all the old carriage bodies and underframes, for example, that were used on the network and are still in the country. So if I go on here and type in coaching stock Isle of Wight, don't worry about the gauge because it might be a different gauge. And as you can see here, quite a few do come up. So you have some old coach bodies out in Brighton and Gurnard. I'd like to visit them one day. Quite a bit obviously at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway, as expected. You can see we get to the bottom of the page. There is no mention of any stock in Brading, not even old coach bodies. Now this is very odd because it is rare for rolling stock not to be listed on this site, but we will press on regardless.
It would seem then that these carriages may prove to be a bit of an enigma. But how and why would a railway carriage end up in a building in the first place? Well, you see, the island's railways have always had a rather interesting history when it comes to rolling stock. In fact, right up to the end of steam on the island in 1966, the few lines remaining were still using wooden-bodied Victorian carriages, some 60 to 70 years old, whilst railways in the rest of the UK regularly had their rolling stock updated. The main reason for this was, oddly, the tunnels, of which there were quite a few on the island, including the one that's still active in Ryde. These tunnels were built to accommodate very early rolling stock, But as railways got busier in the early 1900s and trains incidentally got larger to accommodate the influx of extra passengers, none of these new carriages would fit. With the island's railway system never being much of a money spinner, the companies were reluctant to spend the vast amount of money it would cost to rebore all the tunnels to a new diameter. The only choice then was simple: keep the old stock running.
This of course still rings true today, because the Island Line actually use ex-underground stock on the line between here and Shanklin, the current ones being revamped District Line trains. And the reason they do this is because it's the only available surplus stock on the network that will fit through Ryde Tunnel.
This though wasn't the only reason why the island's carriages were rarely upgraded. The oldest stock on the island incidentally was replaced quite early on, but only from other hand-me-downs from other railway companies. Because these carriages were so old though, with most of their mainland derivatives long gone, selling them on as railway carriages to other companies was not an option. So instead, to try and make a bit of a buck, the island companies sold off the carriage bodies for domestic use as sheds, outhouses and holiday homes, scrapping the underframes. As sad as it may seem, this actually turned out to be a good thing from a preservation perspective, as much of the early carriages were actually saved.
Now this is part of the reason why you won't find any Mark II or Mark I carriages at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway, which are quite common on other heritage lines. You won't even find any southern built carriage stock, but you will find pre-1923 pre-grouping stock, and the reason is because a lot of them were sold off for domestic use, and then after the Isle of Wight Steam Railway were founded in the early 70s, they were repurchased and put back into service.
And though much of the stock here at the Steam Railway bears the Southern Railway livery, remember these carriages were bought second-hand from pre-grouping companies, such as the London Brighton South Coast and the South Eastern Chatham Railway. This then would certainly be the case for the mysterious carriages I'm looking for in Brading, but information appears to be very thin on the ground. Next up then, I paid a visit to the lovely Lynn and Leslie at Brading Town Hall. They showed me some of the brilliant artefacts they had collected from Brading's past, photographs, scriptures and much more. As lovely as the visit was though, Lynn and Leslie had no information on the elusive railway carriages. They instead suggested I visit the County Records Department in Newport.
So I am here in Newport, and I'm actually walking through the old Fairley Railway Tunnel under Fairley Road. You know me, any opportunity to visit an old railway relic. But I'm actually here to visit the Records Department, the County Records Department along Fairley, and see if I can get any information on these carriages, on the building in question. I am a bit nervous when I walk into these sort of places though, because I'm aware that I'm a bit of a scruffy individual. Ooh, very nice. And the people that tend to run these departments tend to be quite smart and intelligent looking people who kind of remind you of that old geography teacher that used to tell you off in class. You know, the one that used to wear their glasses like that on the end of their noses so they could stare into your soul. But either way, I'm going to head over there and see if I can get any information on the building and how it was built.
I needn't have worried though, because as it turns out, the records department just so happened to be shut.
So just my luck, they are closed for lunch, which is fair enough, everyone has to eat. But I've only got an hour here before I have to be somewhere else. So I think what I'm going to do is just bite the bullet and head to Brading tomorrow and knock on the door, see what happens. So I've tried pretty much everything. I've looked on the rolling stock databases, I've asked at the Steam Railway, I've asked at the Brading Town Hall, and I can't seem to get access to the records department because every time I visit Newport it seems to be shut. So I'm just going to bite the bullet really and go and knock on the door and see if the owner is in. They may have gone because the place has been renovated recently. And yeah, and if they are still there, whether I can have a look.
I must admit, it did suddenly dawn on me as I walked past the church that the owner might think I was just a scruffy looking Jehovah's Witness. But never mind.
Hi mate, sorry to bother you. I'm not a salesman or a Jehovah's Witness. I'm after some information about the place. I'm actually from volunteer for the Steam Railway. I came here 20 years ago, and before it was renovated, and there was some old railway carriages upstairs. Do you know anything about them? That were built into the extension?
Yeah, that's a long time ago. That's just after I bought it. That was in the top room. That was all cleared out.
Was it? Okay.
And the old railway seats I put in the garden, and then when they started building, somebody jumped over and nicked them because they were like cast iron.
Oh really?
The seats used to go on.
Yeah.
And I put them to one side. It's more old doors.
Yeah.
The only thing I could see from the railway was like these old cast iron seats with the details on those. I was going to keep them, but
it was all like desolate, the whole place.
Yeah, I just really been touched for 100 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And they'd all on photo, and my computer crashed when I was really big.
Okay. All right.
So sorry, there's nothing for you.
That's all right. Then no, that's all right. Thanks for the information. All right.
It would appear then from that the railway carriages in question were no longer in existence.
So that was it. That was my final attempt at trying to find these old wooden bodied carriages. And the owner seemed to think there were only bits of the carriages up there. But I seem to remember, and my mother seems to remember, them being two full carriage bodies. So I don't know, but either way, they are now gone. He also said that the seats, the original seats from the carriages, were stolen.
It is not all doom and gloom though. I did manage to confirm that these carriages did exist in some shape or form, and that they were used to build an extension on this property. I therefore will be continuing on my quest to find out exactly what carriages these were and why they weren't recorded. And that will be a subject for another video. In the meantime, if you enjoy our channel, you can always help us out by donating towards future videos via the collection pot link in the description below. That's all for now, and until next time, as always, thank you very much for watching.